Okay, looks like we are now live streaming. Welcome, everyone. My name is Tanya Joba, and I'm currently the chair of the Essex Region Conservation Authority. I will get into introductions, but just briefly, I will ask if you could turn your mics off until you are asked to speak to your application. And if you do wish to speak when it is your time, we will see to acknowledge you. Thank you. So good afternoon and welcome to the May 12th, 2021 meeting of the Executive Committee meeting of the Conservation Authority. We'll start by taking a roll call of board members to confirm attendance. Councillor Len Janice from Lakeshore.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Larry Verbeek of Leamington.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Joe Ketty of Tecumseh.
Present.
Councillor Kieran McKenzie of Windsor.
Present.
Fantastic. Welcome again. Just to give you a brief catch up as well, something has come up for me personally. So I will be exiting the meeting at about 3:45, at which time I will be handing it over to Kieran, and I'll just discreetly leave. That way you can just continue smoothly on with the rest of the meeting, okay? Fantastic. I'm going to begin with acknowledging this land as the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Petawatomi peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all the original peoples of Turtle Island, North America, who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. I need an approval for the agenda for today, May 12th, 2021 meeting of the Executive Committee to be approved. Moved by Len Janice, seconded by Larry Verbeek. Any opposed? No, that's carried. We are now going to convene into the Board of Directors, sit as the hearing board in respect of applications under Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act. Moved by Deputy Mayor Joe Ketty, seconded by Kieran McKenzie. Anybody opposed? That is carried. I'm now going to identify the applications and then we will speak to them separately, individually, okay? So the hearings under Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act in respect of 6 applicants. Ryan Korstein is requesting relief from access, ingress, egress policy requirements to construct a detached structure at 1101 Heritage Road, Town of Kingsville. Everyoung Homes is requesting relief from access, ingress, egress policy requirements to construct a dwelling at 3883rd Concession South, Town of Amherstburg. Michael Sotwicki and Sabrina Maggie Switlicki are requesting relief from access, ingress, egress policy requirements to construct a dwelling at 834-836 Riverdale Avenue, City of Windsor. Rick Pello is requesting relief from access, ingress, and egress policy requirements to construct an addition at 259 Warwick Road, Town of Tecumseh. Daniel Dupuy is requesting relief from access, ingress, egress policy requirements to construct a dwelling at 13707 Riverside Drive in the Town of Tecumseh. And David Riem is requesting relief from access, ingress, egress policy requirements to construct a dwelling at 13711 Riverside Drive in Tecumseh as well. We, as the hearing board, are unaware of the matters being brought forward today, and we're only now reviewing and receiving the information provided by staff as of now. The authority has adopted regulations under Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act, which requires the permission of the authority for development within an area regulated by the authority in order to ensure no adverse effect on the control of flooding, erosion, dynamic beaches or pollution, or conservation of land, or to permit alteration to a shoreline or watercourse or interference with a wetland. The staff has reviewed this proposed work and a copy of the staff report has been given to the applicant. The Conservation Authorities Act, Section 2812 provides that permission required under regulation mode made under clause 1B or 8 shall not be refused or granted subject to conditions unless the person requesting permission has been given the opportunity to require a hearing before the authority, or if the authority so directs, before the authority's executive committee. In holding these hearings, the authority board is to determine whether or not a permit is to be issued. In doing so, we can only consider the application in the form that is before us, the staff report, such evidence as may be given, and the submission to be made on behalf of each applicant. The proceedings will be conducted accordingly to the Statutory Powers Procedure Act. Under Section 5 of the Canada Evidence Act, a witness must refuse to answer any question on the ground the answer may tend to criminate that person or may tend to establish his or her liability to a civil proceeding at the instance of the Crown or any person. The procedure in general shall be informal. However, this is a quasi-judicial process and provides for evidence to be given in response to members' questions. Therefore, staff and the applicants will be asked to swear an oath or provide an affirmation to speak the truth. In accordance with Section 28 of the Act, an applicant who has been refused permission or who objects to conditions imposed on permission may, within 30 days of receiving the reasons, appeal in writing to the minister, who may refuse the permission or grant permission with or without conditions. Through order in council, the responsibility for hearing the appeal has been transferred to the Mining and Lands Tribunal. If the applicant has any questions to ask of the hearing board or of the authority representative, they must be directed to the chair of the board. Staff will first introduce the applicant, his or her owner, and others wishing to speak, and then present the staff position. The applicant and or the agent may then speak and may have the comments on the staff if they so do so. I would also remind everyone that the hearing board is open to public, and therefore we will allow others to speak, and if necessary, the applicant in rebuttal. We, as the hearing board, will question, if necessary, both the staff and the applicant or their agent. Before I ask Dan Jenner, Regulations Coordinator, to introduce the applications, I would ask that he swear on oath or provide an affirmation to speak the truth. Oath or affirmation, Dan Jenner?
Affirmation, please, Chair.
So do you solemnly affirm that the evidence which you are about to give in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you.
I do so affirm.
Okay, now our first applicant would be Mr. Ryan Korestein. Good
That is
afternoon, Ryan.
correct, Chair.
Perfect. Would you like to take an oath or just by affirmation? Okay.
Sorry, affirmation, please.
Alrighty. Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence which you are about to give in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you.
I do. I affirm.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Jenner, I'm looking for a mover to, we're going to review the application, right? First, Dan, you're going to do that? Okay,
That is
go
correct,
ahead.
Chair. Thank you, Chair, and
Thank you.
everyone for joining us this afternoon. The first application before us is for Mr. Ryan Korestein at 1101 Heritage Road in the town of Kingsville. Mr. Korestein is looking to construct a 24-foot wide by 50-foot long detached accessory structure on at his existing residence. IRCA staff has been to this site and established the minimum required floodproofing elevation of 176.2 meters above sea level, and this includes our typical 1 foot of freeboard component. The raw 100-year flood level at this location being 175.9 meters above sea level. This is a waterfront property. However, the setback requirements are addressed as the building is being constructed on the roadside of the property and roadside of the existing home. An important note, there is sufficient room on this property between the proposed detached structure and the lake or Lake Erie. If in the future the home needed to be reconstructed for any reason, we've provided that allowance there. The property owner, we've had discussions about containing all of the surface water runoff to their property, and they have provided a standard retaining wall detail, which will be implemented on site. This site is actually fairly unique in that the elevation is significantly higher closer to the lake than on the roadside. So the natural drainage pattern where this structure will be is all of the water is already draining towards the roadway. So even with elevating the structure, we don't expect any major changes to the existing drainage patterns on the property. We are in front of the committee tonight seeking relief from the IRCA access policy requirements. The current IRCA policy requires no more than 0.3 meters of water, 12 inches of water over the roadway during a 1 in 100 year flood event. The road elevations at the subject site range from being above the expected flood levels to approximately 17 inches below the IRCA requirement, road elevation requirement, and 0.25 meters or 9 inches below typical provincial requirements. You can see there on the map that the section of Heritage Road is below the typical provincial requirements, And then as you go over the bridge and north, the elevation gets significantly higher. Through Heritage Road, going the other way, which would be west, the road elevations do vary quite considerably to being above the 100-year flood elevation to below provincial. This is just due to natural fluctuations in the road elevations. Importantly, the emergency first responders at the town of Kingsville are fully aware of the low-lying nature of this area. And this area is fully developed on both sides of the roadway. There's very, very few vacant lots in this area. The roadway is also fully delineated on both sides. As the applicant is satisfying all of the minimum regulatory standards, staff is recommending approval of the application as the road surface will not be lost during a flood or storm event. The area is fully developed. Emergency responders are fully aware of the area. We are not introducing additional people or families into this area. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the application. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Corstein, do you have anything you'd like to add at this time?
No, I do not.
Members of the board, do you have any questions for either the applicant or for Dan? Go ahead, Mr. Paquette.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm prepared to move the application as based on the recommendation.
Okay, so the application as it is read is moved by Councillor or Deputy Mayor Joe Bacchetti. May I have a seconder? Danielle, could I go back to the main screen? I can't see. Oh, there we go.
Counselor Janice supports.
Oh, seconded by Councillor Janice. Anyone opposed? That is carried. Before we go to the next applicant, I'm just going to quickly introduce that our CAO, Tim Burney, has joined us.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome.
My apologies, I was tied up in another couple of calls and I just finished the meeting, so my apologies.
No problem. And as Tim enters, I'm going to be leaving. So everyone have a good afternoon and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, you're taking over chairing the meeting.
I am. Okay, so let the show begin. We are now moving on to the second application, Everyoung Homes. Mr. Jenner, is this you again?
It is, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Again, thank you, everyone. The second application before us is brought forward by Everyoung Homes, a well-known builder across Essex County, and it is located at 3880 3rd Concession South in the town of Amherstburg. The minimum setback requirements for this site are non-existent as it is not what we term first tier development. So it is not directly adjacent to a water course. Although the site is a significant distance from Lake Erie and Big Creek, the flat nature of the Essex region results in the site being located within the 100-year floodplain. To that effect, IRCA staff has been to the site, established the minimum floodproofing elevation, which is 176.2 meters above sea level. Another important note for this property is both of the neighboring properties are at or very near the full floodproofing elevation. And as a result, the property and home, proposed home, will not need to be significantly elevated. So there will be no change in surface water or drainage concerns. The application before us is for the construction of a new single-family home, basement, typical single-story ranch-style home, and it will be meeting all of the regulatory requirements. We are again in front of the committee tonight seeking relief from the IRCA access policies. The current policy, to remind everyone, is 0.3 meters or 12 inches of water over the roadway. This policy allows for some flexibility for vehicle generated waves, ice jamming, potentially large wind across open fields or larger flat areas that we experience in the Essex region. The road elevation at the subject site is 0.18 meters below the IRCA requirement. That's approximately 7 inches. And it is actually above the typical provincial requirements. Emergency first responders with Amherstburg are aware of the flood prone nature of the third concession road. It does lead down to a fully developed area, which is Bar Point, and Amherstburg Emergency Services has updated their emergency response plans to reflect the flood prone nature of this area. The applicant will be meeting all of the regulatory requirements, and the road is partially developed on one side and the other side is property owned by the Conservation Authority, so there's no homes there. Again, the road elevations are above the provincial typical requirements. So staff is recommending approval of the application and the waiving of the access requirements. And based on the road surface not being subject to damages during a flood event, the area is partially developed. Emergency first responders are fully aware of the low-lying nature, and the structure will meet all regulatory requirements such as floodproofing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jenner. Is there a proponent here that's, I see you there, Mr. DeYoung. Did you want to speak to the, you would have to swear an affirmation if you did, which is fine, but if you're satisfied, we could proceed.
I have no additional comment.
Thank you, sir. So board members, are there any questions for either Mr. Jenner or Mr. DeYoung? Seeing none, looking for direction. Deputy Mayor Verbeke.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Janice. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Thank you. Okay, so now we're moving on to the Switlicki application, Michael and Sabrina. Mr. Jenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next application before the committee tonight, brought forward by Sabrina and Michael Switlicki, is in the city of Windsor and located at 834-836 Riverdale Ave. This is in the immediately adjacent to Little River. IRCA staff have been to this site, established the required floodproofing elevation for the proposed single family, my apologies, not single family home, which I believe will have a rental apartment in it, as is current development trends across Essex County. The currently submitted application clearly indicates that the new proposed structure will be satisfying and exceeding the minimum required floodproofing elevation. The homeowner will be installing retainer walls along both property limits, and the setback of the new structure will actually be increasing from the setback of the current structure. So we're going to be moving the home further away from the hazard and elevating it above the typical floodproofing elevation of 176.0 meters above sea level. So we've provided a bit of extra freeboard on top of our standards, and we've located the home a little bit further away from the hazard than the existing home. I have also contacted the City of Windsor Drainage Superintendent just to highlight or be aware of any concerns that they may have as they proceed through the Drainage Act process with respect to structures and the Little River Dike system. The Drainage Superintendent did confirm that they have no concerns with the project and the application as currently presented tonight, which is excellent news and allows us to comfortably move forward with this IRCA hearing. We are in front of the committee tonight seeking relief from the access policies. Again, 0.3 meters or 12 inches of water over the roadway is permissible. Without going into the detailed elevations, we're looking at approximately 5 inches below the provincial minimum typical road requirements. Again, from the mapping, you can see the red, yellow, and green areas, and it bounces kind of between the red and the green, or sorry, the yellow and the green. and that's just the natural fluctuations in the road. Now, IRCA staff has highlighted here some of the higher access routes and the more common access routes. The reality is there are multiple ways to get to and from this property. You can go north, you can go south, and you can take a number of side streets to get in and out of this flood-prone area. The area is 100% developed, and the site is a redevelopment site. Emergency first responders are aware of the low-lying flood-prone nature of this area, have updated their emergency response plans and continue to refine them to better reflect this area. And the application will be meeting all of the current regulatory requirements. So for that reason, we are recommending approval of this application to allow the new structure to be constructed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jenner. Do the applicants have anything they'd like to add to the comments from Mr. Jenner?
No, thank you for considering the application.
Thank you.
Approve it.
Okay, committee members, questions for Mr. Jenner or the applicants? Okay, seeing none, direction, please. Councillor Janice, move the recommendation. Is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor Verbicki, is anyone opposed? Seeing none, thank you, that passes.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, we have item number 4, Rick Pello. Mr. Jenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pello is not able to join us tonight, but he does wish to thank the committee members for their time and consideration of the application. Mr. Pello is looking to build an addition to an existing structure. His home is located at 259 Warwick in the town of Tecumseh. The minimum setbacks, again, we are quite a significant distance away from Lake St. Clair, so it is not a concern for this particular property or application. The home is, however, located within the 1 in 100 year floodplain, which results in any new development needing to satisfy that 100-year floodproofing elevation. For this location in Tecumseh and Lake St. Clair, that elevation is 176.0 meters above sea level, with a IRCA minimum road elevation of 176.1 meters above sea level and a typical provincial road elevation of 175.9 meters above sea level. The existing property that is before us, the first floor does satisfy the floodproofing elevation. So the new addition is not going to have any openings that are lower than the minimum floodproofing elevation. So we are seeking relief tonight from the IRCA access requirements. Again, 0.3 meters of water over the road is the current IRCA policy. The road is fully delineated and the area is fully developed. Emergency first responders in the town of Tecumseh are fully aware of the low-lying flood-prone nature of this property and have updated their emergency plans to reflect this. So we are seeking relief from the IRCA access policy for the application that is currently before us. We're asking additionally the board to give consideration to waiving the access policy for a future proposed attached garage. Mr. Pello's original application to our office included an attached garage. I believe it was one car wide, about 1.5 cars long on the north side of the property. He had to put that project on hold temporarily as he works through some town of Tecumseh bylaw zoning issues for which we will be providing comments on. He elected to take his current application for the small covered porch addition to the board tonight, and it was staff's suggestion that we give consideration to waiving the access requirement for that future attached garage with a few conditions. He is looking to do it within the next 1 to 2 years. So I will outline the reasoning for our recommendation of approval for the existing currently proposed addition, as well as a couple of preferred requirements for the future attached garage addition. And again, this is an application that we could have brought forward to the committee tonight. However, if there were any changes required on Mr. Pello's part for the attached garage, such as dimensions or property line setbacks, the application would have to be brought back to the committee as it would be slightly changed. So doing it this way gives Mr. Pello a little bit of flexibility in that final plan for how big the garage is going to go, and allows him to work more closely with the town of Tecumseh. So the road surface here is not going to be lost or damaged during a flood or storm event. The area is fully developed and the roadways are fully delineated. Emergency responders are aware of the flood prone nature of the area and have updated their response plans accordingly. And the proposed addition will meet all of the minimum regulatory requirements. With that, we are seeking approval. The direction to waive the access requirement for the attached garage is for the same reasons, but with the condition of the attached garage does not contain an additional dwelling unit on the second story. The application is submitted within a 2-year time from the date of this application being issued, which would be the maximum validity period for a permit that went through a renewal with our office. And there are no changes to IRCA municipal or provincial policies that would result in a change in staff's recommendation to the board tonight. So with those conditions, we're seeking relief from the access requirement for tonight's application and the attached garage, which will be coming in the next 1 to 2 years. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jenner. The proponent is here, as Mr. Jenner mentioned, so I'll just turn it over to the committee or the board members. Any questions for Mr. Jenner on this application? Deputy Mayor Verbicki.
Thank you, Worthy Chair. I guess, Dan, you think you foresee any changes in the upcoming Conservation Act or anything that would require us to prematurely give him this application, or should we just wait till the time being?
Tecumseh, through you, Mr. Chair, Tecumseh has updated their emergency response plan to reflect a specific depth of 2 feet of water over the roadway. And this roadway does satisfy that requirement as it is. So if any policy changes were to come forward from the updates to the act, we would expect that it would allow staff to have not taken this to a hearing to begin with. And we will be looking to update the IRCA policy in the future to try and address some of these applications where we're seeking relief from access, but they have a very clear municipal policy and where emergency first responders are comfortable getting to. So the changes that we would expect over the next, whenever we get the regulations, would be more lax in terms of the access requirements and the depth of water, or at least more refined. We wouldn't expect to be bringing this application forward in the future.
Great. I'm satisfied with that, Worthy Chair. And if there's no other questions, I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Verbicki. Are there any other questions, board members? Councillor Deputy Mayor Becchetti.
Question, Dan, regarding the 1 to 2 years, should we be putting a time on that? For example, it expires May 2023, and if nothing's done, that either another formal request has to come before the board or whatnot. If not, my concern is if it's not 1 to 2, he's going to say, well, I'll do it next year. It could be 3 to 5. Should there be a time limit attached is what I'm asking.
Mr. Burney.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I would agree with Joe with respect to that recommendation. Our approval can specify the 2-year maximum time frame, because that is our lawful allowance. So we can specify that date and year to it. If it's not, then it has to go through whatever process is in place provincially at that time. So we could add that to the approval date. Typically, our permits are framed at the point in time of approval with a date in it. We will ensure that that date is applied to it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burney. Are there any other questions? Okay, so Deputy Mayor Verbicki, let's hear your motion.
No, we're the chair. I'm okay with that now too, but like I say, with what Joe said too, I'd like to put that date in there. So now that I'm comfortable that it's in there, my motion still stands. Move the recommendation.
Move the recommendation. Sorry, am I? But are we
with
adding
with the 2 year maximum?
with the 2 year date? Okay, the 2 year time frame. Okay, so the motion's on the floor. I think Nicole's taking minutes. That's clear, correct, Nicole?
Pardon me. Yes, I will incorporate that additional language and those requirements as outlined by Dan and specified by Tim and Councillor Bichetti to reflect the minutes accordingly.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bichetti, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, just.
It's a seconding? Okay, thank you. All right, motion's on the floor. It's been seconded. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, that passes. Thank you. It's good work there. Okay, item number 5, Daniel Dupuis. Mr. Jenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will try and keep the next two brief, as the next two hearings are right next door to each other. The property for this particular application is at 13707 Riverside Drive in the town of Tecumseh. Mr. Dan Dupuis has submitted an application for the construction of a single-family dwelling. Again, minimum setbacks are not applicable for this property. The application before us is for the western property. So the properties highlighted there, that is actually both of the properties. So that has been split into two, and we're dealing with the one lot currently. The minimum required floodproofing elevation for this section of shoreline is 176.7 meters above sea level, and the raw 1 in 100 year flood elevation is 176.4 meters above sea level. IRCA staff has been to the site and established the minimum flood protection standard and confirmed that the home will need to be raised approximately 0.9 meters or 3 feet above the existing ground. This is fairly typical for this stretch of Riverside Drive, and they will be installing retainer walls along the property lines, at least on one of the property lines, because there will be a new home next door, and to ensure that all of their surface water and drainage is contained to the site and appropriately directed to the municipal infrastructure. Current IRCA policy, all right. We are here again considering access and seeking relief from the IRCA access policy requirements. Riverside Drive heading west to Manning Road has a low elevation of 175.42 meters above sea level, which is approximately 14 inches below the IRCA minimum road elevation and 6 inches below the provincial minimum road elevation. Again, these roadways are fully delineated, and this is a fully developed area. Emergency first responders are aware of the low-lying flood-prone nature of these properties and this area, and have provided their confirmation that their emergency plan does address the depths of water experienced for this access route. And additionally, there are multiple access routes available. So the property and the application will be satisfying the minimum regulatory standards, and we are here seeking approval of the application and waiving those IRCA access requirements. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jenner. Committee members, do we have Mr. Dupuy here today?
We do not, Mr.
We
Chair.
do not. And for the next one, is Mr. Riom here, Mr. Jenner?
He is not. They both send their regrets and thank the committee for their time.
Okay, thank you for that. Committee members, are there any questions for Mr. Jenner? Seeing none, direction please on item 5. Councillor Janice. You're muted, but
Move the staff recommendation.
thank you, Councillor. Any, do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Verbeke. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Item 6, David Riom, 13711 Riverside Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is correct. 13711 Riverside Drive. And this property, as I previously stated, is immediately next door to our last hearing. So it should look fairly familiar to the committee tonight. This application is also for the construction of a single family dwelling, and we are seeking relief from those access, ingress, and egress policy requirements. Mr. Riom lives in this area and has constructed a number of homes in this area. In fact, you can see a few of them on the air photo there before us. He is well versed in ensuring that all of the surface water and fill material is contained to the subject site, and is working very closely with Mr. Dan Dupuy, the immediately adjacent neighbor to him, on addressing the drainage between the two new houses. So that should be adequately addressed as well. The IRCA floodproofing elevation, similar to the neighboring site, is 176.7 meters above sea level, with the raw 100-year flood elevation being 176.4 meters above sea level. We do have an IRCA minimum road elevation here of 176.1 meters, which would allow for 0.3 meters or 1 foot of water over the roadway, with the IRCA or the provincial minimum road elevation allowing for slightly more water. So with that, again, we can see here it is the same access route that staff has provided on the aerial photo, with that varying road elevation between the below provincial red line, the above provincial but below IRCA yellow line, and the above IRCA minimum green line. So you can see the variability through those roadways there, as is experienced in most of Tecumseh. We have low pockets of roadways, and then we have some higher pockets where the flood depths would be significantly less. The road is fully delineated and the area is fully developed. Emergency first responders are fully aware of the area and have confirmed their ability to access this area. And we will be satisfying all of the minimum regulatory standards. Mr. Riom and Mr. Dupuy were unable to attend tonight, but do thank the committee, and this has been a very long process for Mr. Dupuy. He started this back when the IRCA, back right around when the Gilmore decision was being finalized. So he's very happy to be in a position where he can now move forward with his proposed development. So we're hoping that the board tonight will agree with staff's recommendation of approval and to waive the IRCA access requirements. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jenner. I think we're coming into the full screen. I'll just wait for a second. Thank you. Board members, any questions for Mr. Jenner on this application? Seeing none, direction, please. Deputy Mayor Brichetti, move the recommendation, I'm assuming, yes. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Janice, anyone opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Jenner. Great work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, now we need to move out of the, I need a motion to move out of the hearing board and reconvene as the executive committee. Deputy Mayor Brichetti, seconded by Councillor Janice. Anyone opposed? Seeing none. Item 6, tenders, there are none. Item 7, reports for approval. EC 0222 2021 restoration material procurement process. Mr. Money is here to answer questions. Seeing none, just one quick one from me, Kevin. Just wondering, I see that we're sourcing the trees for this year's planting season through a number of different producers. I just wonder to what extent you think there's any risk that we might not be able to procure the number of trees that we need to fulfill what we're hoping to be able to achieve this year.
Through you, Chair. No, we do have already sourced out and already have secured the trees that we have for this year. We don't foresee issues this year at all. Really, this is about a change in procurement process. We've been undertaking the same kind of a process for, well, probably since Ken Schmidt began at the Essex Region Conservation Authority. And under Tim's leadership, we're just making it more transparent and making sure that we follow all the processes and procurement policies that we have in place. So that's what this report is really about. We're happily going to be planting these trees and proceeding as indicated this spring. We have a very busy spring season ahead of us with lots of trees to put in the ground, as Tim reported to the media many times.
Love hearing all of that. Thanks for that, Kevin. Mr. Bernie, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And again, and to Kevin's comments as well, it is tough to source this type of material, but regardless, our procurement policies require us to not simply go single source and pick and choose. Limited availability of materials from limited number of suppliers. We do need to clarify some of that in some of our procurement policies. So discussing this with Kevin and Shelley, we wanted to get this in front of the EC, again, as a follow-up to ensure that we're in full compliance with administrative and purchasing bylaws.
Thank you for your diligence on that front, Mr. Bernie. Committee members, any other questions? Seeing none, direction, please. Councillor Janice.
Move the recommendation.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Becchetti, Deputy Mayor Verbicki. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that passes.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you, Mr. Money. Committee of the whole, no business, new business. Is there any new business that any members here would wish to address at this time? Seeing none, other business. The next meeting of the Board of Directors will be June 17th, 6 p.m. Via Zoom. That concludes the meeting today. Great work, everybody. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Deputy Mayor Verbicki, seconded by Deputy Mayor Becchetti. Anyone opposed? Seeing none. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, committee.